Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber, to better understand their buyers, what motivates them, and what they hate that vendors do. It's time to unmute your mic. Are you ready? All right, welcome to another episode of Audience First. We have a very special guest in the house for episode 100. I can't believe I made it to 100 episodes, but here we are in Hollywood. We have the one and only David Doyle from Direct Defense in the house. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and celebrate with you.
Yeah, it's just exciting. It's my birthday, episode 100. Great people in the house. Thank you for joining us in my side of, or my part of California. You're up north.
Up north, yep.
Yeah.
A few hours.
Good trip down?
Yeah, super easy. Enjoy coming down here, but don't make it as often as I'd like to. So,
well, it's a beautiful day out, and we have a great session today. We're going to be talking about everything vCISO versus CISO. I want to know all about it. And we actually touched base on this a couple of weeks ago at RSA with Trey Ford over at BugCrowd, But I want to drill down even deeper on some of the nuances, some of the myths, some of the misconceptions that we're hearing in the market. And so this is going to be a really organic conversation.
Perfect.
And I'd love to pick your brain a little bit. But before we do so, why don't you tell us who you are in more detail? What do you do and why the hell do you do it?
Gosh, all great questions. So my name is David. I have been in the industry for about 30 years or so. A lot of different areas of cybersecurity and IT and business and privacy, a lot of different industries. So I've been really lucky to be involved in everything from retail to high tech to healthcare, commodities, electronic communications, you name it. So one of the things that I really enjoy is taking all of that experience and all that exposure to different industries and different problems, and seeing kind of that common thread and really helping companies, whether it's a full-time employee or in other capacity, to solve those problems. I really enjoy that problem solving and that creative aspect of what we do. And I think I'm kind of wired risk averse to begin with. So yeah. I think it's just kind of a great kind of mixture.
Yeah. So tell me, what are you doing right now over at Direct Defense? What's kind of your role and function, responsibility?
Yeah. So now I head the virtual CISO practice. It's a new service. We provide strategic advisory services for customers. Everything from small to large, right? There are a lot of different business cases or use cases that we envision. Anything from an organization that maybe doesn't have a CISO and is in need of some kind of strategic advisory services. It's a very common problem. A lot of companies, a lot of teams spend so much time fighting the fires that they don't get a chance to really do the longer term, I would say maybe stronger ROI, but longer tailed initiatives. So I'd like to help provide help in that. All the way down to small, medium-sized businesses that, maybe, they are going through kind of a growth period, or they're replacing their current CISO.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they left. As we know, there's a lot of burnout in our industry. And so, a lot of attrition. So I think we can, we look at ourselves as being a partner to really help with, be a stopgap in a lot of cases,
Mm-hmm.
and really an extension of that organization.
So before I ask you, actually, you know what? I'm not even going to ask you what's the difference between a CISO and a vCISO because we don't have enough time in the day to really go down that rabbit hole. But I want to know, what's the one thing you wish people stopped defining, like what is the answer you don't want them to give with regards to what a vCISO is?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Um, I think if we're doing our job right, we're really educating or trying to educate ourselves on the business to ensure that the work that we're doing aligns with business. I think a lot of times we forget that we are an enabler as much as a control point or
Mm-hmm.
owner. So I think that that's sort of like if we're too heavy on the control, the computer police or whatever you want to call them, I think trying to shift that mindset is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Because even for ourselves, right? Even those that are in the trenches that are, you know, dealing with, log management, incidents, just trying to put up the good fight for, helping get system owners to patch their systems. At the end of the day, I think we lose sight of, the fact that we're there to really help that business process be more resilient, which means, maybe it's a better customer service, and maybe it's, health care for a patient, maybe it's ensuring, revenue or sales of a product. And I think it's really easy for us to lose sight of that. So I think it's less of a one label per se, and it's really more of a mindset I look at is,
Mm-hmm.
we are part of the machine, and we need to help kind of remind ourselves and be mindful of um, how can we take our experience and our expertise to help influence the company, or at least share our concerns with decision makers, and
Yeah.
then step back when if the decision is maybe something that we don't agree with, because everything is point in time.
Yeah.
So
Well, shouldn't the in-house CISO be able to do that altogether? I mean, isn't that
that's a
the
great question.
responsibility?
That's a great question. So I think so that brings up the definition of CISOs,
Yeah.
right? And how are companies looking at CISOs? How they define CISOs? Where are they getting that definition of a CISO?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really, there's not a clear definition to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's everything from, who's the smartest computer security person in the room, that's their CISO, or, to someone who's, maybe been a business leader and
Mm-hmm.
understands business, and tries to marry the two disciplines. Um, I, I think what I'd love to, um, what I love for us to try and do as a whole is um, maybe redefine what that role is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's necessarily a label thing, but I think it's really we don't often help um, suss out or have conversations with the business when we're looking for maybe that next CISO opportunity. A lot of times, people have a certain concept in their mind, and that's human nature. But we fail to kind of have this conversation of like, how do you define the CISO? What are you looking
Mm-hmm.
for this
Mm-hmm.
leader to be?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a budget? Are they is there a team that supports them? Is it just one person that's kind of like the evangelist? Is it a placeholder for perhaps some compliance, or maybe you know maybe there's a strategy to sell the business,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to make sure that they're putting out their best foot forward, and the CISO makes it seem like they've got their security program in place and
Yeah.
at a certain level of maturity. Um, and then I think that also goes back to part of the reason why there's a lot of burnout. A lot of people go into the role thinking that it's one thing,
Yeah.
realizing that it's not,
Yeah.
and they really struggle because it's not the right fit.
Yeah.
So the more we can identify that up front, I think the more successful we can be in performing our kind of skill set and expertise, but also the company and the rest of the the industry can kind of I think hopefully come together too. And
The more I talk to CISOs over the years, the more I see them moving out of the in-house CISO role to more of a vCISO function, a fractional function to help organizations of all maturity and all sizes. You got the small and mid enterprise or the small and medium businesses who are largely underserved. You have the mid and large enterprises; they go working fractionally there. Why do you think that is? You talked about burnout, but can you take me through a little bit more deeply what might be causing them to move out of those in-house roles more to a vCISO function?
Yeah, I can at least talk from some of the people that I've had conversations with
Sure.
and talk to that. But it does run the gamut. It's everything from going into a role without knowing that they're going to have the full support that they need to put the
Mm-hmm.
program in place that they want, to people that maybe are a little bit more technical and tactical and are missing the strategic part. And
Yeah.
so there ends up being some friction, and senior management begins to sort of lose confidence in that person, even though they may be a great person and completely right. They're missing that ability to connect what they're doing to whatever that business strategy is. And so I think what you see is people get really frustrated, and for all the reasons, and they want to still give back. They still do what this because they love it,
Yeah.
right? And you know what I think is a great thing to have is part of that ecosystem is a pool of those people with
Yeah.
expertise and experience that you can rely on to fill that need. The need is there.
Yeah.
The gap is there. It will be there. And it's just trying to find the right balance for everyone. COVID was, I think, eye-opening for a lot of people, right? How do we adjust and find that work-life balance,
Right.
And I think in this country we don't do a very good job of that compared to some others, but I think that's always one of the goals too, right? Is how do we reinvent ourselves? How do we grow as a professional, give back to our community, but then also find the ability to spend time with our family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take care of
100%.
loved ones.
Yeah, 100%. So, can you take me through kind of the power dynamics between the CISO versus the vCISO? How do they differ? Where does kind of tension arise? And
Mhm.
I want to more explicitly, I wouldn't say define, but kind of highlight those differences between the roles and responsibilities of those two functions.
Interesting. So I don't know if I would say that there are tensions per se.
Okay.
I think they are really two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both trying to do the same thing. Um, I almost like to look at it as more the virtual CISO is a solution for companies that um, struggle with paying some of the salaries that for the level of experience that they're looking for.
Yeah.
If you want a leader, you want someone who's kind of gone through building programs, helping develop people and teams, working across different lines of business and influencing those folks, and dealing with conflict, like all the typical leadership skills, which takes a long time, and quite frankly, I think a certain trajectory in someone's career path, right? Especially for us, that a lot of us come out of technical or started off as very technical. There's a kind of a convergence where we all struggled or struggle with still of do I stay technical or do I kind of take this managerial people track? And they're both necessary, but I think one of the benefits of that taking the path down to towards more of the leadership and kind of people management is, I think that's where you start to remove some of the roadblocks of, it's not just about being right. It's, what is it we're trying to do and how are we trying to get there? So, I don't know that I don't see a lot of tensions per se. What I do see is that I think CISOs in an organization, they need to have a support system and a network, and that it's interestingly enough, we've been saying this for so many years, at least as long as I can remember, is we want to have a community of people, safe space and network, but we still have this like security through obscurity, and we don't like to share all of our dirty little secrets, right? And so it's a really interesting interesting struggle in my mind. And so I think you know, trying to look at how we can move past that is going to really be helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, what do you think we should do? How do we move past it?
I think really just trying to find, that make a small network of people,
Yeah.
look for a pool of, like-minded folks, or even, not just like-minded. I think we want to try and have folks that have different points of view, different experiences, make a mindful attempt to create that set of resources. And I think I've seen those communities before, evolve and really kind of use that to you know figure out, talk even about our own profession, like where we feel like we're struggling, where do we feel like we're doing well, and kind of as that community try and create some of our own destiny, if it were.
I'll push back and challenge a little bit because I do see we
Awesome.
have a lot of communities in our space. I do see that we're all, to a certain degree, trying to share knowledge and kind of join forces for the better of the world and protection of people. Do you find that maybe we need to bring in others who aren't necessarily in our space but are impacted by the security organization to understand the value of
100%.
that? Because I just sat with a CISO earlier this afternoon who said, "Yeah, I mean, I'm a CISO, but sometimes I have challenges convincing my stakeholders
Right.
of the value."
Right.
So,
100%.
what do you say about something like that? Like, how do you? What my question is, how do we bring in more outsiders, quote unquote, into our community?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I absolutely think we should. So years ago, I thought I was, going to try and make an attempt at that, and I start going through different magazines, so like CIO magazine or CSO, which was usually more for physical security at the time, and to a degree still today. Getting connected with. There are lots of organizations that will, and communities, even local chapters, for executives in different facets of the business. Reach out to them, get plugged into those events, go to that. And what I found was, as I started doing that, I started learning some of the language, some of the things that were concerning to them, some of the things that I realized I was missing the boat on. And then, extrapolate that over the years, right? Being in front of boards of directors and kind of the same thing. We have to have that common language. So the only way to do that is to start, reaching out, asking for mentorship, doing the same, providing it, but also, looking at like spending time more listening, right, and understanding their world and trying to adjust our messaging so that it resonates, so that we are saying at least the same thing or saying in the same way. So to your point, I think, yeah, absolutely. We need to extend the community. I think there's a lot of more closed, like CISO type of working groups and communities. That is great. Love to see more of that, but breaking out of that bubble, very important. And I think, reaching your hand out, going into, setting up time, introducing yourself, whether it's new at a company or even if you haven't been there very long, or you've been there a long time, you just haven't talked to individuals for a while, spend some time and just kind of start to create that relationship, and leverage their networks as well, right?
Sure. Yeah. All right, so I want to shift the conversation and understand kind of some of those trigger moments that an organization would go and look for a vCISO. What happens in your experience when you look at organizations you work with? What happens that they decide now's the time we need to bring a vCISO into the organization?
Yeah, so some of the times some of those examples I've seen as, they're getting to a certain level of maturity, they want to maybe IPO, and so they've spent a lot of time getting, building up their their metrics, their key metrics for customer base, et cetera, usage. And now it's okay, we've got to do something that shows we've got a semblance of a program, some controls in place. And so that's usually one area where I see companies start to have conversations around, okay, we didn't really put security as a priority before. We spent a lot of money trying to get the product development up in place. We got customers now. Let's take the next step. A lot of times, just organizations that have just grown and exceeded where they were before, right? So ideally the goal for every business is to continue to grow and be profitable. And so, as they're growing, they start to go into new markets, new regulations, maybe new areas of the business that now all of a sudden, would benefit from having more controls. And so they start to kind of shift from, sort of the keeping the lights on, a system administrator can do this job to, okay, now we need to understand a little bit more of the complexities that are involved, and how do we grow this and how we ensure that, that we're protected from the next incident, the next ransomware, the M&S, exactly, for example. So those are some of the examples I've seen. Obviously, organizations just, we mentioned earlier where a CISO leaves. Now all of a sudden they've got a need to fill that leadership position, and so trying to find the right skill set.
Yeah.
To fill that.
Yeah. Do you find that there are any misconceptions that organizations have with regards to the vCISO role? Like they bring somebody in and then they're just totally, okay, well, this isn't what we expected, or we thought something else.
I think, so one example that comes to mind is, sometimes customers think that the vCISO is more of that hands-on, doing rolls up the sleeves.
Yeah.
And in some cases that, that's valid, right?
Yeah.
But I think, more than that tactical hands-on person or approach, you really need to have someone that's kind of able to stay at that high level and be able to understand, what all of the dimensions of that company's needs are and what the program, where it is in its current state, and how to improve it. If a leader is spending all the time doing the work, then they're not going to be doing a very good job leading the people or the program, right? So, I think it's a slippery slope to go down. Trying to find a way to develop people internally that are either there or bringing in others to be able to do those hands-on tasks, I think is a much more sustainable way of doing it. And I think it's a better use of that leader's abilities.
What does success look like for a vCISO coming into an organization?
Wow, that's a good question. So I usually like to kind of get a baseline and understanding of where, what's working well and what, where there may be some opportunities for improvement. And then kind of build a prioritization list from there. It's always going to change, right? Like any assessment, it's a point in time. So, I think one of the things I've seen, one of the changes is, and I still am seeing companies kind of struggle with this, is they haven't moved to that assume breach mental model yet. So I think that's a really important one to kind of consider going in, especially if we're going into organizations where their security program is not as mature, or they have certain gaps and blind spots. So looking at how can you create, or improve the containment and the response components of that program, I think are going to be good quick wins. Again, looking at where the skill sets, the capabilities, a lot of times I see where there's a good team of people, but they have different skill sets, which is normal. But there isn't the human assessment portion gets missed, right? The skills assessment. And so what I think is a missed opportunity is a lot of times you have people there that are hungry to do more, something different, and to learn. Some people that are just, they're maybe burnt out, or they're dealing with other issues, personal issues, or they just want to do that one thing that they're really good at, right?
Yeah.
But without having sort of that calibration exercise, um, really miss the opportunity to understand where you can move people around to help develop them.
Right.
Um, you know, again, a lot of times we we focus so much on the technical side. We just have to remember the personal side.
Yeah. Again, I keep referring back to this lunch I had earlier with a CISO working for, a SaaS and fintech company, and he was talking about, um, you know, the fact that he has to help his team mature and maintain progress from the human side and from just the leadership side. That's a big component to his job. And so I asked him, well, how do you measure that progress? And he, was kind of stumped and said, you know what, it's hard, very hard to do. So I'll throw that question back at you. How do we measure progress for, you know, a team being led by a vCISO who needs to, manage and delegate and build that team and increase maturity of the organization? How do they do that? How do they measure it? And how do they also get buy-in from the stakeholders? That's an important component, because to your point, you said, there's a technical part, there's the revenue enablement for the business and growth, but a large part of that is building the team and making
Yeah.
sure that they're not only happy but also performing well.
So I don't know that there's one. I mean, I like to say relationship management,
Yeah.
kind of 101, right?
Mhm.
um, it's difficult because a lot of people, and not just people on the tech side, but even some of the depending on the company, business leaders can be weak or lacking in business leadership skills as well, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's one thing to do is just relationship management, understand who exists and
Yeah.
where they are.
Mhm.
But improving ourselves, right? I
Mhm.
think that's another big one. Trying to self-assess where we feel like we're strong, where do we feel like we're struggling, and then try and make space to learn or to fill that gap.
Yeah.
I think I've heard all kinds of metrics over the years, from measuring attrition and net promoter scores and all that good stuff, and those are, I think, useful metrics. Um, but I would be concerned that it doesn't always paint the most accurate picture. I think it has to be a process of again, just like any assessment, is like, what's our baseline, where do we want to go, where are the gaps, and building a path for addressing those.
Mhm.
And there are going to be so many different pathways, right? Like I mentioned two of them before, about just talking with building a group of peers in your company, or with regulators or auditors or whoever those business partners are. They don't have to be just inside the company, but building those relationships and just understanding where people are, and then slowly try and figure out, does this individual, do they have a desire to learn something different? Let's put together a development plan for them. Here's some training that you can take, free or paid, that can help you get stronger in application security, or AI, or what is it that people are interested in, right? And having those conversations. A lot of times I see that conversation doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And so people, the executives kind of start to manage up, and the people focus on kind of just disengaging. And
Right.
so it makes it really tough to have a good program that's going to be able to respond in an emergency, or just feel like what they're doing is meaningful.
Yeah.
And we all want to feel like we're doing something meaningful.
Yeah. Is there any toxic culture brewing around CISO versus vCISO identity?
If there is, I don't know about it,
Okay.
but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
You know, I think, like, and you mentioned, you know, a lot of former CISOs are leaving and looking and kind of going into the fractional or the advisory, executive advisory route, which I think makes so much sense, right? Because it allows them to continue doing what they love, and in a way gives a little bit of a buffer. I think it's probably, if there is anything, it's probably more on a case by case basis
Mhm.
of, you know, a company and an individual performing that function.
Yeah.
That maybe that, for example, maybe the virtual CISO doesn't have the best interests of that company at heart, right? Maybe they don't look at them really as a partner, but just as a a revenue stream.
Yeah.
So I could see where that could potentially cause some friction or some toxicity. You know, and again, vice versa, you know, an organization that maybe doesn't really fully understand what it is that they're asking for, and, you know, creating some friction between that security leader and a business. But yeah, I'm curious. Have you heard any?
Frankly, I haven't. I've heard more positive things, but I'm always curious to look at the weaknesses and see where things are kind of slipping, so
Yeah.
that we could talk about the alternative. But let's shift to the alternative, because when we were up in San Francisco, you know, jamming with Trey, and we had a great session with, I think about like 30, 40 people in the room talking about how in-house CISOs and vCISOs coexist together, and how the vCISO kind of serves as a quarterback. I liked that analogy, and I think Trey brought that up. So what does a good partnership look like between a vCISO and a CISO working in one organization?
Oh wow, that's, you know, I I think like any organization, right? It's trying to find the complement, the balance,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, I've certainly been in roles where, you know, we tried the good cop, bad cop approach, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Um, but at the end of the day, trying to find the skill sets, right? Like sometimes coming in and just, you know, um, you know, getting all the bees, you know, up in a buzz, and then having someone come in to kind of like placate, is an interesting tactic that can work. Um, it's really, it's how do you engage people? How are you getting their attention? How are you keeping their attention? You know, I think personalizing things for people is going to be more successful than just kind of throwing a bunch of facts at them. So, you know, I think looking at that dynamic between the CISO and the virtual CISO and figuring out like where are there good relationships already that exist and where are the struggles, and, you know, maybe it's a divide and conquer. Maybe the virtual CISO focuses on, you know, because they may have a different approach or different skill set, a different way of communicating, and see if that helps kind of create either building some bridges or just, you know, clarifying some misunderstandings that may have existed. And you know, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we're all trying to, you know, make it better than we found it, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we do have to be creative, and I think that's one of the things that draws us to this. But I do think that it is a very underserved or under leveraged or utilized kind of tag teaming of the CISO, virtual CISO. I think there's a lot more opportunity for us to be doing more of that.
Yeah.
And so I think we could have a lot more conversations around, you know, creative ways that we might want to try to come up with some, you know, solutions.
Well, we have, you know, 25 more minutes.
25
So
more minutes.
let's double click into that. Like, in your opinion and from your experience, I mean, there's probably no right answer, but, you know, from your experience over the years being a practitioner, what would be a creative way to, you know, amplify those opportunities for collaboration between the vCISO and CISO role?
Hmm. I mentioned a couple already
Yeah.
about relationships and
Yeah.
kind of divide and conquer. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a good
We
question.
can do part two. We got Kelly over there in the back. We can
That's
do
right.
part two when we have some brainstorming sessions around that. But
Yeah.
so, like, what's if there's somebody who's looking to transition into the vCISO role? What's kind of one key critical piece of advice they should take away right now before they make that leap?
I think asking why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it they're trying to achieve?
Sure.
Um, and then what's their philosophy, right? I think in order for you to be successful, or for anyone to be successful in the role, in my opinion, really need to approach it as, an extension of that company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're not a full-time employee, like viewing yourself as a full-time employee, viewing yourself as a vested employee.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just too easy to deprioritize things, or to not really not feel, I think, especially when we go back to talking about influencing other teams and staff. um, if you're just kind of doing it to collect a paycheck, they're going to know, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's pretty transparent. So
Mm-hmm.
there needs to be that, that going is somewhere, or leading people isn't just going somewhere, it's taking people with you, right? So, like, why are we doing this? You want this, having the success of that organization, I think needs to be a major driver, and it has to be felt as much as heard and seen. And so, in order for that, I think the individuals that are wanting to make that move, they really need to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier said than done, right? But I think there are a lot of people out there that have kind of that philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's the game changer in sort of the how that is going to be received. And people want to know that you've got their back, right?
Right.
So you've got to build that trust, and
Yep.
part of that is making people understand that you care as much as they care about something.
Sure.
And so that's I think that's a key component.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, we're gonna shift to a super fun part of the episode, and we were looking for some of these questions before we hit the big red button over there. But this is called the hot seat. It's a quick fire challenge. You don't know what these questions are, but whatever
Alright.
comes to mind first, shoot.
All right,
You ready?
sure.
Okay. What is Direct Defense's dirty little secret, something buyers never ask about but should know?
Wow. Gosh, we care a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There is. I'm amazed at how much time and effort and passion and caring the team all across all the teams have.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably not seen as much on the other side, because I think we try to hide, shield people from that.
Yeah.
If they see it, it's usually like in the responsiveness, maybe. But yeah, I would say it's that like that stressed out caring for the best interests of them.
Well, that's key, especially for a service provider who's working hand in hand as a partner. So, I love that. So, what's one lesson you learned the hard way that others could learn from today? Any lesson?
Hmm. Wow. Um, there were certainly some times in my career that I wish I had done a better job in listening to employees and
Mm-hmm.
professional development. Um, and I think some of it was like a disconnect of what of just, wanting to help try and give them what would make them happy and successful, but not always being uh, as well equipped in kind of facilitating that conversation, especially in some cases where, maybe people aren't used to that conversation.
Right.
They haven't had it before, or maybe they had it before and they were burned in the past. And so you're trying to find better ways to do that. I'm always kind of constantly evaluating because unfortunately I've lost a couple good people because of it. And so I take that as on me.
Amazing. What makes direct defense different from the competition?
Oh gosh. Probably the same as 2 questions ago.
Yeah.
No, I think, again, we really, we're very, bespoke. We really want to find the right solution for customers and partner with those customers, not just, in word, but like actually build partnership with them. And I don't see that as much. And, not that that doesn't exist. I'm sure it does.
Sure.
But, I think I'd like to see a lot more of that as a general. I don't know how sustainable it is when you get to a certain size as an organization. But that customer service component is just so strong in our DNA. And that's part of the reason why I actually, took the job as well. Is I've worked in food service and retail many, many years ago, and the world would be a better place if everyone did. But just understanding, being empathetic, and trying to create that good experience for customers or for your friend or family or whatever. I think it's just a skill set, and I think people, they have it or they don't. Not that you can't get it, but I think it's a differentiator, and you feel it, immediately when you see it, and I think that's been just such a core part of the company's culture, and absolutely a huge differentiator.
I love it. Describe direct defense's solutions in 3 words. It could be 4. Again, I let people cheat on this. It's totally fine. A lot of people have been describing it in 4 words. So.
Informed, secure, and strategic.
Okay. All right. I love it.
I can elaborate too if you want.
Yeah. Okay. Let's.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, so I, we've been doing this a long time. Visibility is critical, right, to what it is we want to try and understand, to figure out how do we secure it, what do we secure, et cetera, right? So you have to be informed to create that visibility, and likewise, and vice versa, right? And then, using that to help create how you're going to secure the things. So you got to know, you have the visibility. Then from there, you can start to secure them, and then from there, you'll start building your resiliency and kind of be more strategic. So
I love it. Yeah, amazing. All right, if direct defense were a superhero, who would it be?
Wow. That was a good question.
You can make one up too.
Yeah, I'm not really good on the superhero play. I guess I'm all in black, so let's go Batman.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Or it could be if it were a Hollywood star, because we're in LA, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. I'll have to defer that to my daughter. She knows all the stars. I couldn't tell you if I was sitting right next to someone.
All right. The security space, where do you think it's going now and in the future?
Oh, interesting. I think it's not going too much further than where it's always been, to be honest. It's the same problems, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be at different points in their journey, which I think is great. There's always going to be a new company or a new technology that's going to have the same kind of underlying problems. So I think it's more about understanding where companies are in that journey and how to continue to improve.
Yeah.
And doing it so, intelligently, right? Like, the old adage of you don't want to spend more money than it takes for, the problem. So I think, I think it's going to be I honestly think it's the same, just, applied into different use cases, but same problems.
Now, Direct Defense, you guys just launched a new product line or a service? If I'm
New service.
okay, take me through that a little bit. What do you have?
Sure. So essentially, it's we're going through a transformation of our services, our current service offerings, in an effort to really rebundle things to make them more consumable for customers. And so, we'd like to. We've been obviously helping companies from the small to large spectrum, but we see the smaller, medium-sized customers still really kind of not. They still struggle a lot, and so we're really trying to focus our efforts more on helping them than we have in the past. Not that we haven't helped them in the past, but again, it's with more intention.
Yes.
And so part of that is virtual CISO services, helping create a leader within the organization, either as a quarterback, as we mentioned before, or to fill a need that doesn't exist yet. So that as a company is looking at how to make their investment in security, they're looking at it through hopefully the right criteria,
right,
and not just reading it in the newspaper or watching it on the news, or and so that a lot more to come.
Yeah,
but it's essentially an evolution for I guess where we've been the last 12 years.
I mean, what are you looking forward to most with regards to the launch of this new service?
Gosh, I think really just getting out and hearing people's stories, hearing their pain points, and being able to have those conversations on what are ways that we can all collectively try and create solutions. So there's again, so many industries, and they're all moving so fast, and it's such a great feeling when you're sitting there talking to people and someone's like, I have that problem and I solved it this way, and you're like, oh, great. Or we have that problem too, let's talk more about it. Like what you're doing. So I think I really enjoy those types of things, and that's I think the.
Okay, so David, we're headed towards the end of the session. Is there anything else you'd like to impart on the audience today before we sign off?
No, I mean, this has been really awesome. I really enjoy talks with you, and the moderating at RSA was amazing. I think we had just so many great conversations. I think as intimate as this is, it's nice to have that engagement from the crowd, which I really was excited to see how many people liked what we were saying. I think, right, and then we're able to really ask questions, and so anyway, I just want to thank you for that, and that was.
I appreciate the opportunity. Listen, I've listened to many panels, I've facilitated panels, and I always felt like there was audience engagement missing, because at the end of the day, those panels are for the audience, right? It's not for us to hear each other speak, and so I wanted to make sure there was room for people to ask questions, and I appreciated them too, that they leaned in and were able to feel like they could be contributing to the conversation. So, to your point, we're supposed to bring people into the community, and we're supposed to work together, not against each other or in silos or whatever we want to call it any other day. But I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you coming down to Los Angeles for this 100th episode, which again blows my mind that I've done this. Actually, I've done it more than 100 times. I'm close to 200, but like officially 100 on paper. So thank you again for coming.
I'm on.
Where can people find you?
Come to directdefense.com, always the easiest, or catch me running around East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah, and next event you're going to be at is?
I will be speaking next week in Hawaii for the local ISC Squared and ISSA chapter, and Yeah, it should be a fun little conversation around work from home and some of the security risks that
Yeah.
still exist, and that companies can kind of consider implementing things that they already have to help add more security and more resilience.
Amazing. Well, David, you are always welcome to the show, and so are your colleagues, the team over at Direct Defense. We love you guys and what you're doing over there. Again, if you want to visit Direct Defense, go to directdefense.com. It's .com, yes?
Correct.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Danny. Appreciate you.
All right, this has been another episode of Audience First. We are out.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.